World Under-20 double sprint champion and Jamaica's national junior 100-meter record holder Briana Williams has returned an adverse analytical finding. The substance is a banned diuretic in her urine given at the Jamaican National Senior Trials in June of this year. The 17-year-old Williams finished third in women's 100 meters at the trials, securing her spot on the Jamaica team to the 2019 World Championship in Doha next month. But Briana's failed drug test for a diuretic that in anti-doping language can be used as a masking agent to hide the use of prohibited substances puts her participation at next month's World Championship in doubt. SportsMax.tv writer and track and field expert Leighton Levy has been following the story, and he joins us on set now. Welcome, Leighton.
Hi guys, what's up?
All right, so we heard two sides of the story. We heard from Dr. Crown, we also heard from Anne. Where do you stand on this issue, and how do you see it turning out?
Well, I'm more inclined to go with what Anne Shirley just said. Anne Shirley is an expert at this. She was a former executive director at the Jamaica Anti-Doping Commission. She says things that are unpopular, but they're true, and they're within the right context. And it kind of puts things in perspective as to what could happen. So based on what she says, and I trust her judgment immensely, we may have disagreed in the past on a lot of things, but in terms of what she just said a while ago, you have to now hope that the worst case for Briana Williams is a 3-month suspension, which, if it goes retroactive to June 21st when she gave that test, then you're looking at she'd just be able to get into the World Championships if
it's retroactive.
Yeah, if it's retroactive, and if they select her on September 6th, which is the deadline for entries for the World Championships. So it's a tight go, and as I said yesterday, it's a very tricky situation, and it continues. And I think now the entire nation will wait with bated breath as to what the outcome will actually be in a week's time, just over a week, September 6th, when the final entries are in.
Did we understand her correctly, though, Leighton, when she appeared to suggest that if JAAA comes up with a finding that either the IAAF or WADA, the world governing body with anti-doping, disagrees with, that it could be a reopened situation and JAAA's position could not or may not be a final position?
Yeah, it is, and they could challenge it, and they think that the ruling is in some way in breach of what their established protocols are. They're well within their rights to challenge it, because as Anne rightly said a while ago, there are minimum standards to maintain in terms of the process, in terms of sanctions, if there are any. And so when Dr. Blake would advocate for maybe no sanction, or Dr. Crown saying that they're looking for a minimum of perhaps a reprimand,
yeah,
those things are held probably with a lot more optimism, given in their minds, the purity of what happened in terms of what affected Briana Williams is probably the crux for them. In terms of what the actual regulations dictate, they might be a little ways apart in terms of what the actual conclusion will come out to be. And that's the worrying factor, because then if Briana Williams is sanctioned any at all, she loses all of those marks. She loses the 1094, and she could possibly lose the NACAC and the Panama Under 20 title that she subsequently competed in after the national championships. So she has there's a lot at stake here, and a lot more than that as well. There's a lot at stake for the athlete and the athlete's future, and of course Jamaica's reputation as well.
Leighton, you realize there's a lot of confidence surrounding those that are standing up for her, right? What do you think is the reason that the JAAA president is so confident that she'll be exonerated?
I think, if you get to know Briana and you get to know the team, you pretty much have an idea about the integrity of these people. This clearly, when you talk to them and when you get the sense from them about what happened, it was purely accidental, careless maybe. But as I said yesterday, people are human, and they're prone to making mistakes. I'm sure when Sharon went to buy those tablets, because I remember seeing her the day of the national championship at the JAAA's headquarters when I went to collect my my accreditation. she looked terrible. Yeah, she was feverish. She hugged me. She looked weak. And she said that she's coming down with something and she hopes Brianna doesn't get it. Turns out 2 days later, Brianna
This is her mom, right?
Yeah, this is her mom. So you're looking at a situation where she's just being a mother looking out for her daughter. And that's a human element of it that the water code doesn't factor in, because they designed these rules to protect the integrity of the sport. So they assume that everybody is guilty before they can be presumed innocent. But still, Anne was right. You know, why did she take it? You know, because as with Sherwin Simpson and Asafo, they did all the research. They didn't find anything. They turned out it was contaminated. I don't think perhaps enough legwork was put into whether or not this was, you know, suitable for her to take. The thing though is that I'll go back again to the human element. She's down with the flu. She's probably not even thinking clearly. She's thinking, I just need to get some relief for myself and some relief for Brianna. So she went out, bought the tablets, and boom, next thing you know, we're here where we are.
Is it fair though for athletes to be under that kind of jurisdiction where they can suffer such huge penalties in innocence?
It's not fair. I mean, Dr. Crown is one of those people who have advocated that the rules, the water code is significantly skewed in their favor as opposed to the athletes. The athletes have to walk a very, very tight line. And while I understand the reasons for it, because as you know, there are thieves and criminals in every sphere of life.
Right.
The thing is that you have to take those people into consideration before you consider those who are innocent. And that's where the problem is, because there are many athletes out there who have gone on suspension for innocent, I mean, just simple mistakes that they've made. And the thing is that water assumes, and the water code assumes, that you can live like this for however long your career lasts. Some people are lucky. Some people make a simple mistake. You never can tell. I mean, you walk through a door, you stub your toe. You're not expecting to, but it happens. So to punish those athletes with the severity of the code the severity that the code demands, I think it's heavily skewed, you know, against the athletes, and I think it's in some ways it's really unfair. But I understand why it's done.
Yeah, because Leighton, then it brings into question, how do you tell who is innocent and who is not?
Look, track and field has taken a big hit over the past 3 or 4 decades. In fact, further than that, actually, go back to the 1960s when the Eastern Bloc athletes used to dope so heavily that some athletes became, like there was a Czechoslovakian discus thrower, female thrower, I think they threw in 76, or was it 72, that eventually did a sex change because she had so much male hormone in her, she virtually became a man over time. So, you know...
But all of that was state-sponsored as well.
Yeah, that was state-sponsored, but it's still, this is what used to happen, which is why the water code came into being in the first place. So you're looking at a situation where without these guidelines, without these rules, athletes used to run gamut on doping and, you know, hormone therapy and, you know, anabolic steroids, and, you know, there are fears that athletes are actually doing gene doping. No. So you're looking at a situation where they have to protect the integrity of the sport. That's also suffering from a lack of growth, because track and field has fallen way down the pecking order in terms of popular sports in the world. They're doing everything they can to protect the integrity of the sport. There are some other sports that are still resistant to some of the water code because they're doing their best to protect their athletes as well. The IAAF sides with WADA because they have to protect a sport that's struggling in terms of public image as well. So, you know, it is what it is, I guess.
Well, Leighton, time becomes of the essence. It's of importance now. They have expedited the hearing. How you see it turning out?
Well, I think the best thing, if they can fit that hearing into that window over the next couple of weeks, next 2 weeks, they'll have to do a lot of work in a hurry. And I think, you know, hopefully, 3 months back, you know, given the circumstances, she loses that record, those records and everything, but she has her entire career ahead of her. Few people remember that Shelley Fraser Price tested positive for oxycodone back in, I think it was 2013 or thereabout. No, it was 2014. It's a few years ago, but that's the point I'm making, is that you don't really remember now that she tested positive for oxycodone, and she had, I think, a 3-month ban again. That was for a toothache, gum ache, because she did some dental surgery before she took a flight to Shanghai. and ended up having to, being administered by Coach Stephen Francis. Few people remember that now. I think Brianna at 17, this would be a significant lesson for her. But I think over time, given her personality, given her talent, she will recover from this.
Hope she does.
Well, one of the things that always comes to me when situations like these arise, Leighton, is the emotional attachment that we feel as Caribbean people to our athletes. And conversely, a similar situation would arise with an American athlete, and we in the Caribbean would say they are guilty and cast aspersions on them. But when it happens to our athletes, we become very defensive. So there's never an easy way to look at these stories.
No, which is why I always tell people, if you live in a glass house, don't throw stones, because I remember when Veronica Campbell tested positive a few years ago, the charge that she was exonerated on subsequently. A lot of Jamaicans were up in arms. But when U.S. athletes in that period, and even now, the situation with Christian Coleman, there are a number of Jamaicans who were, but
no sympathy.
Yeah, no sympathy. We have to understand that, and it's one of the real things that we need to accept, is that not everybody who tests positive is a cheat, because things happen in error through being human. It doesn't mean that you're an intentional cheat. It's not like your Lance Armstrong, who went through these blood transfusions for years and evaded, sanction. It's not like, there are many athletes out there who have gone unsanctioned because the retroactive period of punishment passed. This is why eventually the rules, the timeline was moved from 4 to 8 years, and I think now it's 10 years. But there are many athletes, as well as many athletes out there, who are just going about their business and ending up on the wrong side of the water code, and it's unfortunate. But it's the environment in which we exist, and I guess, what's good for the goose is good for the gander, I guess.
Okay, Leighton Levy there putting his spin on what has happened with this story. So we heard from Dr. Emir Crown, who will be legally defending Briana Williams in this story. We also spoke with the former executive director of the Jamaica Anti-Doping Commission, and surely she gave her views as well on this story.